Funding for this CyberWire podcast is made possible in part by LastPass. LastPass is an award-winning security solution that helps millions of individuals in over 70,000 organizations navigate their online lives easily and securely. Businesses can maximize productivity while still maintaining effortless, strong security with LastPass. LastPass can minimize risk and give your IT team a breakthrough integrated single sign-on, password management, and multi-factor authentication solution. CyberOps accompany fighting in the Caucasus. Iranian threat group exploits Zerologon in the wild. The Kraken gets unleashed in Southeast Asia, of all places. Emotet is back, and it's after state and local governments. The US House identifies the Four Horsemen of Silicon Valley. Monero gains criminal market share. The US Comptroller of Currency moves for clarity in altcoin regulation. Joe Carrigan takes a look at ransomware trends. Our guest is Mathew Newfield from Unisys with remote school safety tips for students and parents, and a cyber attack from Waikiki. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. Lethal kinetic warfare now carries with it inevitable cyber operations as combat support. Fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh continues. It's increasingly accompanied by supporting cyber operations. Cisco's Talos unit finds that an unspecified threat actor, probably a foreign espionage service, is deploying Poet rat malware against government and civil targets in Azerbaijan, often through phishing campaigns themed to take advantage of the ongoing conflict. That foreign intelligence service need not belong to Armenia. Many governments in the region are interested in the conflict. Both Turkey and Russia, for example, are closely concerned with the fighting. Microsoft has identified active exploitation of the Zerologon vulnerability, CVE 2020-1472, by the Iranian threat group Redmond tracks as Mercury, but which is more generally known as Muddy Water. The attacks began after public disclosure of a Zerologon proof of concept, ZDNet reports. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency directed in Emergency Directive 20-04, issued on September 18th, that all U.S. federal agencies patch Zerologon, giving them 3 days to complete patching and report compliance. The attacks appear to have begun some days after CISA's deadline expired. Researchers at security firm Malwarebytes have blogged an account of what they've learned about Kraken, a fileless attack mounted by an advanced persistent threat group. Kraken, which is for the most part spread by phishing, often with workers' compensation phishbait, injects its payload into the Windows error reporting service, the better to evade defenses. It's not an entirely novel technique, but it does seem new with respect to this particular threat group. Exactly who that threat group is remains murky, but Malwarebytes sees signs that it may be APT-32, a Vietnamese espionage outfit that's used similar tactics and tools, and that has been most interested in regional targets, including those in the Philippines, Laos, and Cambodia. CISA yesterday issued another warning to the effect that the long-familiar Emotet Trojan is not only back, but back in a big way. Its principal targets, the ones CISA is concerned about anyway, are U.S. state and local governments. Emotet has come and gone. It went quietly in February, returned from 5 months' occultation in July, and began to appear in attacks against state and local governments in August. It's also a problem of international scope. As CISA points out, quote, cyber agencies and researchers alerted the public of surges of Emotet, including compromises in Canada, France, Japan, New Zealand, Italy, and the Netherlands. Emotet botnets were observed dropping TrickBot to deliver ransomware payloads against some victims and QuackBot Trojans to stealing bank credentials and data from other targets. End quote. Senator Sherman, thou shouldest be living in this hour, or something like that. The U.S. House has released the results of its antitrust inquiry into big tech. The subcommittee investigating concluded that Silicon Valley is a hive of monopoly on a scale not seen since the 19th century's Gilded Age. Quote, to put it simply, companies that once were scrappy underdog startups that challenged the status quo have become the kinds of monopolies we last saw in the era of oil barons and railroad tycoons. End quote. Google's parent, Alphabet, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon are singled out as the new robber barons. 150 years ago, it was Stanford, Hopkins, Huntington, and Crocker. Nowadays, it's apparently Pichai, Cook, Zuckerberg, and Bezos. The harsh report is largely reflective of the subcommittee's Democratic majority. The Republican members, while hardly carrying water for big tech, really aren't entirely on board. The report so far hasn't affected the stock market, where Seeking Alpha reports the companies mentioned in dispatches seem to be holding steady. Digital Shadows finds that Monero is taking market share from Bitcoin as the preferred cryptocurrency of criminals, extortionists, and dealers in contraband. In general, what the criminal customers want in currency are accessibility, usability, and anonymity. The attractiveness of those three qualities tends to vary with circumstances, prominently figuring in which is the extent to which the gangs feel the heat is on. As recent criminal cases have shown, while Bitcoin and Monero are both appealing because they're relatively more difficult to trace, they can, in fact, be traced with the right application of effort and technology. So, while both leading alternative currencies are imperfectly anonymous, Monero is generally thought to be better to have the edge. In any case, it seems to enjoy a lower profile in the glare of law enforcement. From stories like this, it's easy to get the impression that altcoin is inherently shady and that the only people interested in cryptocurrencies are get-rich-quick tin horns, black marketeers, pump-and-dump artists, and so on. But that's not at all true, and we wouldn't want to leave you with that impression. In fact, they're maturing as legitimate financial instruments and are growing into a mature regulatory framework. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, hoping to ease financial institutions' leeriness of cryptocurrencies, has issued interpretive letters designed, the Wall Street Journal says, to provide some clarity with respect to regulation. The OCC hopes, according to the Journal, to avoid the mistake that's hobbled adoption of new technologies in the past, reliance on the most conservative possible interpretation of law and regulation. So you thought Waikiki was all sand, sun, surf, and island relaxation, didn't you? It seems that a gentleman who was arrested in May for carrying ammunition illegally to a Black Lives Matter protest, one Christian Grado, is again in hot water with the law for mounting a denial-of-service campaign against the Honolulu Police Department. Hawaii News Now reports that his public defender says Mr. Grado isn't dangerous, and maybe he's not, but the Honolulu prosecutors disagree. Dangerous or not, his LinkedIn profile shows something of a Renaissance man, current dance instructor, former U.S. Army mortar platoon leader, West Point graduate, and so on. What he was doing carrying ammo to a protest isn't clear, but give him an A for initiative. He set up a GoFundMe campaign to stake him bail when he was scooped up by the police in May. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Recorded Future. If you haven't already done so, take a look at Recorded Future's Cyber Daily. We look at it. The CyberWire staff subscribes and consults it daily. The web is rich with indicators and warnings, but it's nearly impossible to collect them by eyeballing the internet yourself, no matter how many analysts you might have on staff, and we're betting that however many you haven't got enough. Recorded Future does the hard work for you by automatically collecting and organizing the entire web to identify new vulnerabilities and emerging threat indicators. Sign up for the Cyber Daily email to get the top trending technical indicators crossing the web. Cyber news, targeted industries, threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, malware, and suspicious IP addresses. Subscribe today and stay ahead of the cyber attacks. Go to recordedfuture.com/cyberwire to subscribe for free threat intelligence updates from Recorded Future. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. If you've got school-aged kids, there's a good chance they are either learning at home or spending a lot less time at school than they used to. That new reality is proving challenging to many parents, logistically, for sure, but there are security issues as well. Mathew Newfield is Corporate Information Security Officer at Unisys, as well as a board member of the National Technology Security Coalition. He joins us with remote school safety tips for students and parents.
So one of the things we recommend is you have to differentiate work and play. This is something I think a lot of parents are not doing when it comes to cyber and technology early enough in a child's life so that it becomes really like muscle memory for them. Most people, when they go into the corporate world, they have to adhere to that acceptable use policy that a lot of us have heard of or even written for corporations. And teaching a child at a young age that there is a difference between what you can do on a computer for school and what you can do on a computer for fun are different. So let's focus on for school. And I recommend one of two things, depending on the situation that you're in. If you're fortunate enough to have multiple machines, let's say your child has their own laptop or desktop, and the school provides one for them to use. Explaining to your child that when they're on the device for school, it is for school purposes only. There's no social media, there's no video games, there's no internet surfing. None of that can happen while you're on that device. And when you're on your personal device, while you can surf and maybe do the things you authorize them to do, there's no schoolwork. And that's a foundation.
Do you have any advice for working with folks who may feel a little overwhelmed with this? I'm thinking about parents in particular who may not be that technically savvy, and they're faced with the challenge of securing these devices, their home network, and looking out for their kids all at the same time. It may be new ground for them.
Not only is it new ground, but it can be massively overwhelming. And we get that. I get that. A lot of us in the cyber community get that. And we're here to help. We're doing things like this and having these conversations to try to educate people on what they should be doing. And there are a lot of online resources. If you think about the companies that you've bought services from, your home internet, going to their official website and looking for their guides on how do you lock down, their security guides, or how do you harden the devices you bought is a good start. And doing some basic research online of good cyber hygiene for the home is key. And then understanding that they're not at it alone. There are enough of us in this community. We want to help. So reach out to me, to others, to people you may know in this field, and ask for assistance. There are no dumb questions here. And to your point, this is new ground. None of us have been dealing with this full-time school from home before. So ask people who at least have the basic understanding of cybersecurity methodologies, what they should do.
That's Mathew Newfield from Unisys. And now, a word from our sponsor, Proofpoint Insider Threat Management. In a changing work landscape that increasingly relies on technology, people are the new cybersecurity perimeter. Employees, contractors, third parties, and anyone who has access to your sensitive data and critical systems can become an insider threat. And it's on the rise. Proofpoint's leading insider threat management solution, formerly Observit, empowers security teams to identify user risk, prevent data loss, and accelerate incident response so you can protect your organization from insider risk. To find out if your organization is protected, take a free trial at observit.com/cyberwire. That's observit.com/cyberwire. And we thank Proofpoint Insider Threat Management for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Joe Carrigan. He's from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, also my co-host over on the Hacking Humans podcast. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
Interesting article caught my eye. This is from ZDNet, from Steve Ranger. It's titled Ransomware. Gangs are shifting targets and upping their ransom demands. Give us the skinny here, Joe. What's going on?
This is coming from IBM X-Force, which is their incident response team. And IBM has said their responses to ransomware attacks have tripled from the last quarter to the previous quarter. And I don't know if that's because ransomware is on the rise. It's probably a combination of these factors. Ransomware is on the rise, and IBM is probably good at responding to these things, so their sales are going up as well. But tripling is pretty good. That can't all be just because IBM is making more sales. This is actually because the crimes are becoming committed at a higher rate. The biggest three industries they target are manufacturing, and they get hit by 25% of the ransomware attacks that IBM responds to. Professional services, and government. And these are organizations with low tolerances for downtime. If you think back to the Baltimore ransomware attack and the chaos that worked on that city because of the downtime, it's devastating. It's tough. Yeah. IBM has seen the trend where these ransomware attacks are also becoming data breaches, and they're saying we're gonna sell your data on the black market. And when their data gets sold, IBM is reporting that they've seen prices ranging from $5,000 to $20 million as a sale price for a company's data. Sodino Kibi is the ransomware group responsible for at least a third of the incidents that IBM responds to. And IBM estimates that Sodino Kibi has victimized about 140 organizations, with about a third of them paying up. And that makes their revenue at least $81 million. That's how much Sodino Kibi has made with ransomware. So that's really why they do this, right? There's $81 million to be had.
Talking about real money.
Right, exactly. This is not small potatoes anymore. They are getting more sophisticated about how they calculate their ransom requests, which is smart, right? I talk about how all of this is an economic situation. There are economic forces at work, and their requests range from 0.08% to about 9.1% of the victim company's annual revenue. And those dollar amounts range from $1,500 to $42 million, depending on what your annual revenue is and where you fall in that percentage spectrum. I guess the 1,500 incident is probably somebody who runs a small business who got hit by it. And what do you do if you're a small business who gets hit by ransomware? Your best bet is probably just to pay up, right? $1,500, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have the resources to have a security response team come in.
Probably not going to put you out of business.
Probably not going to put you out of business, but losing your data may very well do that. So it's kind of an easy decision. But $42 million is a pretty big ransom to pay. And even if that's high on the spectrum of percentages of annual revenue, I mean, 10% of annual revenue is not going to be payable by a lot of companies unless they have a big stockpile of cash. Revenue is way more than the disposable cash that a company has on hand.
Yeah, well, and some of these are getting paid by insurance companies, right?
Yeah, some of them probably are getting paid by insurance companies. That's right. Yep. And maybe they're offloading that risk to the insurance company, and they're helping out.
Yeah, it's interesting to me with this continued sort of professionalization of ransomware, and its place in the ecosystem, if you will, as people grow accustomed to it. Insurance companies have policies for it. Businesses have plans against it to deal with it. Doesn't seem like it's going anywhere anytime soon. No, it doesn't. And Caleb Barlow on an upcoming episode of Hacking Humans talks about this and talks about the possibility of outlawing payments. And we discussed that a little bit and what kind of impact that would have. If it became illegal to pay a ransom, if there was a law that said you're subject to more fines and you're also maybe subject to prison time for doing this, I think that might have an impact on it. I'm not saying that we should definitely do that right now, but I think it's definitely time to have this conversation. All right. Well, the article again is titled Ransomware. Gangs are shifting targets and upping their ransom demands. That's over on ZDNet. Joe Carrigan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Dave.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Proofpoint's Observe It, the leading people-centric insider threat management solution. Learn more at observeit.com. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. And for professionals and cybersecurity leaders who want to stay abreast of this rapidly evolving field, sign up for CyberWire Pro. It'll save you time, keep you informed, and it will get its peanut butter in your chocolate. Listen for us on your Alexa smart speaker, too. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Puru Prakash, Stefan Vaziri, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Carrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Dina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And now, a word from our sponsor, Verizon. Mitigate the risks and realize the benefits of digital transformation with the help of Verizon, a leader in cybersecurity managed and professional services for nearly 2 decades. From secure cloud computing solutions to advanced detection and response capabilities, Verizon helps secure data, networks, and infrastructure of many of the world's best-known organizations. Their annual Data Breach Investigations report is considered the gold standard of cybercrime research. And Verizon's leadership in network, wireless, and IoT connectivity makes it uniquely capable of protecting the ever-expanding attack surface. Let Verizon help you optimize your defenses and achieve the maximum return on your security investments. Learn more at verizonenterprise.com/products/security.